Hi, I'm Claire Thomas and I'm an author. So my book is The Performance, published by Hachette. It has quite a simple premise. It takes place during a single performance of a play, Samuel Beckett's Happy Days, and it begins as the audience members are arriving in the theatre and it ends just after the curtain falls. And it's focused on the interior thoughts of three particular audience members. So there's a woman in her early 70s called Margot, who's a literature professor. She's the first character we meet. And then there's Summer, who's actually working as a theatre usher, who's in her 20s. And then finally we meet Ivy, who is a philanthropist, but her life is not as sort of perfect as it may initially appear. And that's it. It's just in their heads for the play, and there's some interaction at interval. Look, they're not anyone particular. They're all me and none of them are me. There we go. I write fiction because that's what I'm comfortable writing, and I feel freer in that place. I had this idea a long time ago and I thought, that's high concept. That might be interesting. The idea of having a novel taking place in the minds of people watching play, that was the initial idea. I got to the point where it became, paradoxically, the kind of the static nature of it was very liberating. So I could go wherever I wanted in their minds. So it was actually very freeing, and I just went there. Well, the idea has been sitting there for a long time, but I didn't try and do anything with it. I just kind of hoped that I wouldn't see another book that came out about people watching a play. I mean, they're united in terms of they're all sitting in the same space, in the same moment, and that's the beauty of theatre. And there's this kind of inherently shared and quite intimate experience. So I wanted to capture that, but what they are responding to and where their brains go and what they're thinking about is quite different. And also in terms of the play, what I actually use from the play in the novel is a very small proportion of the play. So someone else could write the same thing using the same play, and it could be about completely different things. So I've just picked out what I wanted to. I've just used it as I wanted to, but someone else could use it for complete, and thematically it could be something quite different. The title is an interesting, it's a good word, particularly good word in English. A couple of friends of mine who are French speakers have asked me about what it's being translated into French, and people have asked me about that word because there's not a sort of direct equivalence in the French. In English, of course, there's a literal performance, the play that's going on stage, and then there's the notion of performativity in day-to-day life in a kind of theorised way. But then more than that, it's just about layers of self-awareness and awareness from others and different kind of modes of being in different contexts. All that kind of comes up, and the performance can kind of evoke all that single word in English, but it's slightly more curious in French apparently, so I look forward to seeing what happens there. I certainly didn't deliberately try to do this kind of cross-generational thing. That happened. That was a nice consequence, but I didn't do that strategically. I didn't think, I better appeal to the 20-somethings, the 40-somethings and the 70-somethings. That's just what I settled on and what I wanted to engage with. The first one is called Fugitive Blue, which has just been re-released by Hachette, which is amazing. So that came out quite a lot of years ago. Why do I write? Because I love books as much as anything else in the world. There's other things that you can do that require commitment and a certain kind of talent, but for me, I love writers and I love words and I love books, so that's why I want to be a writer. And also for me, it's a way of processing the world and a way of kind of doing something with my very busy brain. I was making snacks in 2020. I was doing kind of final edits on this, which was a good thing because it was sort of stuff that had to be done, and it was defined and manageable, little things, nothing too tricky. But because it's also being published in the UK and the US, there was a lot of admin just coming from the different publishers in different territories. So last year was a lot about that, managing that. I was going to write my next book last year, and I was at home with lots of children making food, so I've got two primary school children and a toddler, and last year was just all about keeping them fed. There's a real emphasis on food here, but that was a way of our sort of lives, that making food, organising food became a way of punctuating our days. I have also worked for many years as a university academic. The students I loved, despised the bureaucracy and everything else, but the students I loved. I'm not doing that at the moment, which is good. I'm trying to kind of edge myself away from this particular work environment that wasn't good in many ways. So I'm doing a bit of supervision with a couple of students, but that's sort of it at the moment, and just trying to get into my next book that I was hoping to have largely completed by now, but that's fine. Time is elastic. The first thing that comes to mind is I read War and Peace, which was it sounds a bit obnoxious, but I did it through this organisation in the US called A Public Space. So it's a literary journal and a publisher, and they did a book club, and I've never done a book club before, but it was run by Yi Lee, the novelist, and it basically was just kind of set reading 20 pages or so of War and Peace across, I think it was about 3 months. So it was basically my winter. I did that, and it was a very that was rewarding, because if nothing else, it's like, well, that was the year I did that. I was very, very bookish as a child, so I was voracious. I remember quite precociously, as a 6-year-old, I think it was, I wanted a very serious book for my birthday, like no pictures, no fart jokes, nothing kind of silly. I wanted this, I wanted a proper book, which to me meant, hardcover. And I remember that my parents gave me this poetry book, like this thick, but with like Bible paper, like super thin paper, and thousands of pages basically in tiny font. And it was a poetry collection called Poems for the Young and the Very Young, I think. And it had kind of different themes, and it was just, I adored that. And I kind of worked my way through this ridiculously large poetry book. Was wild about any book set in the ballet world, because that was sort of my obsession as a child. So, thwarted dreams and, competitive little girls, loved all that. Couldn't get enough of that. Well, I am working on my next novel. As I said, I'm hoping, I don't know. I'm not going to give myself a deadline in case anyone is listening. I've got a lot of stuff happening with the performance, and so it just came out in the US last week, and it's coming out in the UK in a couple of weeks. So there's a lot of things happening around that, which is exciting, but I'm also looking forward to kind of crawling back into my cave and just being completely in the headspace of the next one again properly. It's been an absolute pleasure to meet you. Thank you.